In a tragic incident that has shocked the entire world, the Al-Ahli Hospital in Gaza has been struck, leaving more than 500 civilians dead. A major back and forth has erupted between the Gazan authorities and the Israeli Defense Forces over who takes responsibility for this devastating attack. The IDF has asserted that the strike resulted from Palestinian Hamas rockets gone awry, misfiring and then tragically hitting the hospital. Israeli authorities, whether it is the IDF spokespeople right up to the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, are all insisting that they possess confirmed evidence pointing to a misfired Palestinian rocket which led to the catastrophe. In response, US President Joe Biden has expressed his outrage over the incident. Hamas has claimed that this was an air-to-ground strike and they do not have in their possession weaponry which can cause such widespread damage, and that too to a multi-story building. They claim that Israel used American-made missiles to carry out the air-to-ground strike on the Al-Ahli Hospital. But Israel has denied these claims. Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari said that there were no Air Force, ground or naval attacks in the area at the time of this blast at the hospital. He said that radar detected outgoing rocket fire at that exact same time and intercepted communication between militants which indicated that Hamas was behind the attack. This unfortunate event unfolds just a day before President Biden was scheduled to land in Tel Aviv for what would be his first visit since this war began. His planned trip also included visits to Jordan, meetings with the Jordanian king, King Abdullah, the Palestinian president, Mahmoud Abbas, and the Egyptian president, General Sisi. However, this itinerary has been abruptly cancelled in the wake of the hospital attack. Now the United States has confirmed that Biden will not be traveling to Jordan. His only stop will be Tel Aviv. The US now faces the challenging balancing act.
I was deeply saddened and outraged by the explosion at the hospital in Gaza yesterday. And based on what I've seen, it appears as though it was done by the other team, not you.
While this is a much-needed clean chit to Israel, this could further rile up passions both within Gaza and in the wider Arab world. Biden's language in Tel Aviv is significantly different from what he's been saying for the first 10 days since this war began. The United States has a long-standing commitment to support Israel's right to self-defense. Simultaneously, it is also trying to restrain Israel from striking civilian targets like hospitals. It is also a blanket violation of the Geneva Conventions which govern the rules of war, specifically clauses 18 and 19, which explicitly bar countries from targeting hospitals which have civilian populations receiving treatment. Tragically, this is not the first time that civilian targets have been hit in conflicts between Israel and Palestine. In the past, too, there have been instances where civilians were deliberately or even inadvertently targeted, resulting in significant international outcry. In past conflicts, civilians have been tragically targeted, leading to dire consequences as well. One glaring example is the 2014 Israel-Gaza war, where Israeli airstrikes hit residential areas. It also hit schools and hospital buildings, all of which resulted in significant civilian casualties. And these actions drew global condemnation back then. It damaged Israel's international image. It also prompted calls for investigations into potential war crimes. Eventually, Israel had to pull out of that war. In response, Hamas too has launched indiscriminate rocket attacks, endangering Israeli civilian populations. Now, the world is increasingly calling for a more humane approach in this long-standing conflict. There are growing demands for the cessation of attacks on civilians and for the protection of innocent lives in the region. The hospital strike only intensifies these cries for a more compassionate and just resolution, which can only be through the two-state solution. Also, in the last 10 days since this war began, and perhaps because of the brutality of the images of Israeli civilians being attacked, some of them taken hostage, elderly, women and children, Israel got a carte blanche of sorts from its allies, its friends and partners, countries from the United States, countries in Europe, and even partners like India were emphatically and resolutely sympathizing with Israel, to the extent of saying that Israel can do what it deems fit in its self-defense. That blank check now seems to have run out. this particular attack on the Al-Ahli Hospital could be a turning point in the change of narrative, that there have to be guardrails in Israel's response, that they can't attack civilian populations, that they can't target hospitals. This is something that is going to be clearly spelled out by the international community, by the US President, by the United Nations Security Council, and by Israel's friends and partners, howsoever outraged it might be in the aftermath of the October 7th attacks. The hospital incident may also throw a wrench into Israel's planned ground offensive in Gaza. The global outrage and the condemnation could possibly influence the decision of Israel's leadership and its military planners. In the face of international pressure, they may have to reconsider the scope as well as the targets in this ground invasion. The situation is dire, and all eyes are on delicate diplomacy at this stage. President Biden, who had hoped to mediate peace, now faces the challenge of maintaining a delicate balance between Israel's need to defend itself and the threat of a spillover into civilian targets. He must, and he does, and will support resolutely Israel's security and security needs, while at the same time advocating for the protection of Palestinian civilians. In this time of crisis, the world watches with bated breath as the United States seeks to navigate these treacherous waters with the help of the United Nations Security Council and its friends and partners to try and rein Israel back, to at least put guardrails in its ground offensive against the Gaza Strip. It is a somber reminder also of the urgent need for a peaceful resolution to this long-standing question of Israel and Palestine. The resolution has to be one that prioritizes human lives and dignity above any territorial claims.